I want to take a minute to explain the difference between a functional behavior assessment and a functional behavior analysis. Sometimes people have questions because the terms are similar and the two processes have some things in common. So let me describe a functional behavior assessment. That's what we're learning about here. And a functional behavior assessment is used to determine, or actually more accurately, to hypothesize the function of a challenging behavior. The key component of a functional behavior assessment is direct observation of the challenging behavior. And the person conducting the functional behavior assessment will also use records reviews and interviews to supplement and help them guide them during the assessment process to make a hypothesis about that function. We often talk about the function after an FBA as if it's been determined for sure, but really it's a hypothesis because we don't have experimental control in the situation, and so we're making our best guess based on all of the information that we have. After we do an FBA, we would put intervention in place and we would monitor the intervention and the progress, behavior change of the individual and collect data. And those data would help us know if we were accurate with our hypothesis of the function or not. So that's an FBA, and that's what we're doing, learning about in this class. And that is what is typically done in a school setting and is usually the first process used when somebody is formally assessing challenging behavior. Now, a functional behavior analysis is actually an experimental process. And so the purpose is still to determine the function, and we can more closely or more accurately say we've determined the function with a functional behavior analysis because we are using experimental design within the process. And the key piece to the functional behavior analysis that makes it different from an FBA is that we actually would manipulate the variables in order to make observations. So we're not necessarily even in a naturalistic setting, though that's a possibility. It's very difficult. Usually these happen in a clinic setting, and they're conducted by somebody who has advanced training in applied behavior analysis and specific training in functional behavior analyses. The process involves setting up a series of small experimental scenarios where variables are manipulated in a very specific way so that we can observe that challenging behavior. And so that means we're actually eliciting the challenging behavior. We're setting up scenarios that we believe would make that behavior happen, and we may even be reinforcing the behavior on purpose in order to gather the data we need. So as you can imagine, there are some ethical concerns with this process, and we typically only do a functional behavior analysis for behaviors that are very complex or have a long history, and FBAs have not been able to uncover the function, and intervention has not been working, and often the behaviors have some component where it's very important that we figure out the function, and we've not been successful in doing so. And that is something that a team would have to decide that need, that potential progress we could make, knowing that function outweighs any short-term stress that we may be causing by eliciting the challenging behavior and by reinforcing that challenging behavior for a short period of time. And so functional behavior analyses are important and they're powerful and a very helpful tool to have. But again, they need to be conducted by someone who's been trained specifically to be able to carry those out in order to do them very correctly, because we are eliciting challenging behavior. And so there's not a lot of room for error. We don't want to get this wrong. We need to do it correctly, and we need to be aware of all the ethical implications. So that's functional behavior assessment and functional behavior analysis in a nutshell.